Did you ever think for a second that you'd be in this career?
So I was hired to be a fundraiser based on the fact that I had great relationship building skills and connection skills. You do have an ability to connect with people and to find out what their interesting story is. Impact is really things that you can do. Whether it's a child with anxiety or a teenager who's suicidal, those are the stories I talk about in our community. I am the storyteller.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to take a quick break from our show to say a massive thank you and a big shout out to one of our amazing sponsors, Dave DiStefano. Dave is a mortgage broker with over 13 years in the business, and Dave has a great rapport with a network of lenders, including big banks, credit unions, trust companies, financial institutions, and private funds. He will work on your behalf to help you find the best mortgage with the most agreeable terms and the lowest interest rate. After meeting Dave many times and having great discussions with him, he provides a level of confidence and comfort in knowing that he is going to take care of you. If you want to reach out to Dave, you can find his office on 6293 Thoroldstone Road in Niagara Falls. For more information or to make an appointment for any of your mortgage needs, call 905-933-1090. That's 905-933-1090. And thanks for listening. Back to the show.
What's going on, Meeting Gold listeners? It's Chris Battaglia, 416 Coffee, best coffee in the world. Use the coupon code MEETINGGOLD to get 10% off your first order at 416 Coffee. Enjoy the show. Done.
So, Kim, talk to me about, was that example from your parents, was that something that was an understanding developed over time, or was it something that you just immediately knew about them was good?
I didn't know any different. So some of my friends' parents were stay-at-home moms, I'd say, and I'm looking more on the female side of things for influence. But I really didn't think that there was any other road I would want to take anyway. We had lawyers in our family. We had Superior Court judges in our family, two of them actually. So I think that's where my lawyer thing came from. That, and I talked all the time, got tossed out of class for talking. So I thought, well, I might as well get paid for it. And in the end, I did get paid for talking. So it all
really interesting that you say that.
It all kind of worked out. Yeah.
Anytime somebody asks me about my energy, I always say I used to get kicked out of school or kicked out of class because of my energy, and now I'm being hired for it. It's really interesting that you said that. Did that come, like that sense of energy, because I sense that from you, come from your parents or come from an example in your life?
My mother will walk into a room and I have arrived, I'm here. Her presence is noted and noticed. And not just because she's the loudest one in the room, but her personality is pretty infectious. And I'd like to say that I have some of those qualities within me as well. As we were talking, I do have an ability to connect with people and to find out what their interesting story is. And from there, we develop a unique connection and relationship. And I really think those relationships are everything in whatever you're doing in life. Like, we're all selling something at some point. I'm selling Pathstone as an agency and want donors to invest in what we're doing with kids and families across Niagara. Somebody may be selling kitchen cabinets and T-shirts and whatever, but we're all selling something.
Even ourselves.
Yeah, for sure.
In a relationship of any kind,
That's
right?
first, right? If I don't like you, I don't care what you've got or what you're selling. I'm probably not going to do business with you.
So what is, for you, being able, because it's a serious talent and natural ability to be able to connect with somebody literally like that. Not too many people can do it. And it makes you approachable, it makes people confide in you, and it makes you a seriously good relationship builder. What would you say are some of the skill sets that you've honed in on being able to do that as you've gotten older? Because you had a raw talent at a young age, and now it's a mastered talent, obviously still growing, but you've had years to develop it. What would you say skill sets you've honed in on for that?
So I was hired to be a fundraiser based on the fact that I had great relationship building skills and connection skills, because I actually didn't have a clue why they were looking at me for this fundraising job when I got a phone call so many years ago. And I said, I'm not qualified to do fundraising. And they said, you're a great relationship builder and you make great connections. So I think in any relationship, whether it's business or personal, we have a responsibility in the maintenance department. So if you are a great friend, you're doing a couple of things, right? You're checking in on your friends, you're, hanging out, like making social engagements with them. You're picking up the phone to call them. You're shooting them a text saying, just thinking about you. I'm kind of, ask any of my friends, if they ask you, or if you ask them, what does Kim text you? I often say, I miss your face. And that means, like, I don't miss texting you. I don't miss talking to you on the phone. I miss seeing you. So I think that if people feel like they count in your life, that's kind of the basis of great relationship building. Remember birthdays. Remember how they like their coffee. Remember what they might be allergic to. Remember their kids' names, their dogs' names. Those sorts of little details show that, A, you're really listening and you really care about that person. So I really think when we stop talking and just open our ears to listen, and listen not to reply, but just to absorb, that's really the key.
Geez, the first statement you made, I've never heard it said before, but you have a responsibility of maintenance. And people my age, when I left high school, 2.5 years ago now, they had gotten mad at their friends because they hadn't reached out to them. Now, I would say that majority of the time, in my opinion, that friend that was complaining never maintained the relationship or even attempted to maintain it.
Right.
And I find that interesting. People want to complain about, I don't have any strong relationships with this person or that person, but what kind of maintenance are you doing to maintain that relationship? That's such an interesting point.
So you will always have a group of friends where someone is always the planner and someone is always like the one that comes late or the one that cancels last minute. Like, you're always going to have that. It's a matter of not taking offense to, by it, just accepting what it is. It's funny. I'll tell you a story about...
Go for it.
So when I was in radio, I lived in Toronto, Ottawa, Brockville, Montreal. And whenever I would come home, my girlfriends from high school, we'd get together and we'd have breakfast. And one every single time, the same one was never there. So we got to the point of we knew she wasn't going to show up. We left an empty chair. We talked to her like she was there. It ended up becoming a thing. We never held it against her. She was overly apologetic for never making it, but that was just her. It was totally okay. Yeah. And we're still friends with her to this day. And sometimes she comes and we make a big deal when she does, and sometimes she doesn't. It's just acceptance of who they are as people.
That's interesting. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Pathstone here. Okay. Developing relationships, your role in Pathstone, there's a connection there of how you got the job, right? You said somebody called you?
Yeah, so my first nonprofit job was actually at the hospital here in Niagara.
Really? Just down the road?
Yeah. So a friend of mine from Montreal moved here and called me, and I had already left Montreal. So we were kind of following each other. And she said, I just took a job running the Pathstone Foundation in St. Catharines. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's amazing. So you're moving. This is amazing. And she said, yeah, I want to hire you to be my major gifts officer. I go, what is that? I don't even know what that is. And she said, it's relationship building and connections. And I said, why did you think I'd be good at this? And she says, I think you're going to be great at this. So it took about a month and a half for me to be convinced, because I was doing corporate sales at the Greg Fruin Theater, and I loved it there. I just loved it. And Greg and his whole family were such great people and just really kind to me. And this was after I left radio. I was bopping around. I was teaching at Niagara College. I was doing some things. I was figuring stuff out. As long as you have survival skills, you'll never be unemployed, and you will always, you'll figure out a way.
Yeah.
So I went to the hospital to be a major gifts officer, and within 4 weeks, I absolutely loved what I was doing. And basically, it was what she said. I was connecting with people, creating relationships, connecting them to something at the hospital that meant something to them, which would mean it meant something to us. It's like matchmaking. Finding donors for projects is like matchmaking.
So what is your job role? Okay,
what is my job?
I think of as an employer, I think you always want to give a set list of things that you expect, and then what the team member can expect from you.
Right.
What was your expectations for the job role other than just talking to people?
That's it.
That's it.
That's it. And then writing a case for support. So once we had a conversation, I figured out what they were interested in and what we had, and I kind of did some brainstorming and put it together. Then it was a matter of writing a case for support to the donor to say, this is what we'd love to see you commit to. This is what we can show you in the form of impact and results, and this is what it's going to do to further the health of our community. And then that's it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Did you ever think for a second that you'd be in this career?
No. But you know what? As I started like kind of doing some background thinking, I was volunteering for the Canadian Cystic Fibrosis Foundation when I was 10 years old. My cousin Chris had cystic fibrosis, passed at age 18. My aunt was the Niagara Falls chapter president for CF. And so whatever she wanted us to do, we did. So I was writing names on chocolate eggs at Zeller's, which doesn't even exist anymore. We were in parades dressed as clowns. We were collecting change bubbles at the Shoppers Drug Mart, like whatever needed. I was doing health fairs. I found a picture of a 12-year-old me with a mask, which is to give them oxygen to their lungs. I kind of did. I was in deep with CF because I was connected to the cause because of my family. But I loved to volunteer. So but I didn't really think about that at the time I entered nonprofit. So after leaving the hospital foundation, I went to Canadian Cancer Society in Toronto, was on the major gifts team for the national team. So I had donors all over the country. I met some of the most interesting people, did an amazing campaign with the Tragically Hip ahead of Gord Downey's passing, raised a lot of money for brain cancer research, got people talking about it for the first time ever because there really wasn't a lot of talk around the life expectancy around brain cancer. Glioblastoma wasn't a common word, and it's one of the most common brain cancers. So I got to do some really meaningful, impactful projects there, but then it was time to come home.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up at Pathstone, and I've been there now just over 5 years.
What would you say is your most fulfilling purpose in all of those jobs? Because they are very similar, just representing different things.
Different causes.
So what would you say is the number one most fulfilling thing that you, when you get up in the morning, you're prepared to feel fulfilled in this way?
So, as much as I hate to say that, impact is really things that you can do or point to, because it should come from within. Like, I actually feel like I'm doing the best possible job I can for the organization. I feel like, the paycheck I earn is, definitely deserved and then some. I feel like I'm helping kids all over the region in my own way. I'm not a counselor, and I never profess to be, but I have the privilege of being able to tell the stories that our counselors are taking on every single day, whether it's a child with anxiety or a teenager who's suicidal. Those are the stories I talk about in our community. I am the storyteller. There's a couple of proud projects. So, we have a naming for the Tragically Hip at the Clinical Trials Hub in Kingston after raising $500,000 in a day for brain cancer research through 185 events that were planned across the country. It was pretty amazing. Engaging volunteers and making them feel like their time to us is valuable. I love being able to go and talk to kids in classes, I should say, and that stigma continues to be reduced in the mental health field because kids will say, "Oh, I go to Pathstone for my anxiety," out in the open in front of their peers, and I think that is amazing because when I was in high school, there was no such conversation.
Yeah, 5 years ago when you were in high school.
Yeah, so stigma reduction, I think, is that's right. 5 years ago. Stigma reduction, I think, would be, the proudest part of what I do. And I'm part of a huge line of people that are doing the exact same thing. Like anyone that's in the mental health field is trying to reduce stigma every single day.
What would you say is the biggest threat to our society today?
Well, I'd say social media. But there is so much good that comes from social media, but then there is so much that isn't beneficial.
Like what?
Well, I think that for kids, it's funny. One of our therapists said, you should be able to go on social media at the same time you can get a credit card. So that would be about 18 years of age. And I said, I know adults that are not regulated enough to be on social media. Some people just don't process it well. They measure their worth with likes and shares and comments. And then there's other people that just put something up and they don't care. So I do think that people have lost their sense of boundaries with social media. I think that privacy is important, and it shouldn't be maybe shared so widespread as, you know, some do it. But again, it's to each his own. But I think when it comes to kids, I think like bullying happens a lot longer on social than it does in the playground. Like, it used to be, if you got bullied at school, okay, you got bullied at school. Not okay, but you got bullied at school, but then you went home.
Right.
And it was done until the next day.
There was a sense of escape, what you're saying, but on social media there isn't.
24/7. And, you know, I don't know if you remember, like, getting invited to a party and then, or not getting invited to the party, but a bunch of other people did. So now it's, you miss the invite and then you miss the party.
And then you see all the videos.
You see all the videos and you see all the socials. So it's like it's that fear of missing out. It's the fact that, why didn't I get invited? Why don't they like me? And I think it can really tear away at someone's self-worth and self-confidence. I don't know if our children have as much resiliency as maybe our parents had, or I'm not sure.
Let me jump in. Yeah. So there's a saying, and I'm not sure if you've heard it, but they say strong men create easy times create weak men create hard times create strong men. And they say that that's the cycle of how the world goes.
Okay.
And however long that cycle is, you know, you can look at it in different ways. Look at like World War II, right? Like World War II, you had hard times. It created really strong men, which is where we got that extremely strong generation. You know, my grandparents, right? So like 90 years old. Mm-hmm. Then those grandparents, they did their best to make as easy times as possible for their children.
That's right.
So my father, you, right? Similar. But you still understood what it was like to see that hard work come from your parents.
Sure.
Now, parents, you know, 40 to 60 years old, have done their best to create the easiest possible times. To create the easiest times, which unfortunately is creating a tough world to live in, because I think everything is so exposed, especially on social media. What would you say about that whole saying, and like, do you agree with it, or?
Well, I do agree with it. I do find, and what I've been kind of saying over the last, I'd say, year and a half or 3 years, I guess now with COVID, with struggle comes opportunity. So when we struggle, we find ways to discover opportunity. Some of our best projects at Pathstone came because we hit a bunch of roadblocks on the way. And so all that told us is that's not the right path. It doesn't mean there's not another path, but that particular one we were looking at was not the right one. So it forced us to kind of go either around it or in a different direction, and it led to success. So, you know, I think we can kind of instill that same quality in our kids. When you encounter struggle, now's the time. Like, there's struggle for a reason. Mm-hmm. So let's learn from it and find success. With struggle comes opportunity. As a parent, though, how do you teach that? How do you teach your kids to be resilient in a world that they are encouraged to be soft? Well, you have to show that you're resilient, first of all. So resilient parents can essentially instill that in their children if parents aren't resilient to begin with. And we talk about that with anxiety. Kids know if it's not all right. Like, they sense your energy. So anxious parent, like, anxiety is contagious. Anxious parents will have anxious children. So as a parent, and it's hard for parents to park it, right? Yeah. Like, if they're aware of it, then they can park it. They can park their anxiety. You know what? I had a great conversation with a good friend of mine, Jim Switzer. He's a CEO of Switzer Cardi. Okay. And he said to me, I mean, he has thousands of employees, and he said to me, he goes, I might be so pissed off, but when I come to the office, it's calm, cool, collective. Park it. It's the same idea as parenthood. I compare business a lot to things. I told you I'm a workaholic, so I look at business and how it relates to. As long as you love the work that you're doing, as long as it feels like work, then you got to reassess. There you go. But there you go. Yeah. Otherwise, you're good. There you go. So what I found interesting was when he said that, it's the same idea as you for parents. Being able to hide that. And I'm going to ask you the same question I asked him. As a CEO or as a parent, how do you park it? How do you, I guess, hide it? You don't have to hide it. I think you have to find the audience in which you can discuss it. So, like, you know, there were times where a friend will call and she goes, I just have to vent. I'm like, have at it. Like, I'm here. And so it's just finding the appropriate audience for your airing of the grievances. You know what I mean? You know, your children, you know, if you're on speakerphone in the car and your kids happen to be in the car, that is not the time.
That's interesting. So okay.
You have a live studio audience of young people who are impressionable, and you don't think they're listening to you, but they are.
Subconsciously or even consciously.
Yeah.
As a parent yourself, you have a daughter. Mm-hmm. She's 16. Mm-hmm. What do you feel were some of your biggest achievements and what you did intentionally to raise her as a good child at an early age? Mm-hmm. And you can totally talk yourself up.
We always had open conversations. Her dad, too, with her. And so now she's a teenager. And teenagers are not as easy to talk to because their phones are attached to their hip. They've got, you know, 1,200 unread Snapchat messages, which...
Is your daughter serious?
Seriously. I said, what's the 1,200 for? Those are snaps. And I'm like, oh, of course they are. What? So I found opportunity to have conversations with her. And when I say have conversations, I mean just let her talk. So I call it hot tub confessionals. We have a hot tub in the backyard. We'll get in the hot tub and she just talks. I find with teenagers, don't sit right in front of them talking eye to eye, like eyes to eyes. You're not going to get anything from them. But if we go for a drive, hot tub, go for a walk, those sorts of things where we're kind of side by side carrying on, and she will just talk endlessly. Like, I know everything, I think, or just about everything that's going on, and I just let her talk. You know, throw in the odd, interesting, oh, wow, that's cool, oh, fun.
How do you build that safe space? Because a lot of kids, here's the thing is, okay, so some parents might be listening to this and say, well, my kid doesn't do that. Why won't my kid confide in me? And the question I'm going to have for you next is, how do you as a parent create a safe space or redeem a safe space that you maybe didn't create earlier?
So I've always been, I think, providing a safe space for her to talk with me. But the other part of it is you have to engage in conversation. You have to ask them questions that don't require one-word replies. Like, I often ask her who she had lunch with versus how was school? Good, right? You're going to get good, fine, okay.
Yeah, they'll say one word. I do the same.
Word, yeah. But if I asked her who she had lunch with today, if she says nobody, we have a problem because I want to know why she's sitting alone. But 9 times out of 10, it's, you know, Julia and I or Jocelyn and I went for sushi at Sobeys or went to Starbucks or whatever, right?
Right.
Did you run into anyone, you know, kind of thing. And then we just kind of continue the conversation from there. I think they don't always have to be the most severe, serious of conversations, but finding things you can do together will provide that space to just, you know, open up. We talk about, you know, in counseling at Pathstone, if people are coming in for crisis and support, let's say, we always make sure that we have something for them to drink and something for them to eat, because those two things provide comfort to people and an ease. So all of a sudden they feel a little more at home than they did when they first walked in.
Like a comfortable environment.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we also make sure that the design of our site is very much like that too, but that extra little enhancement provides comfort. So if Dee and I are making cookies or doing something in the kitchen or, you know, snacking or whatever, it again provides that sort of easy, laid back. Now, don't get me wrong, we've had issues for sure. We've had, like, there's some things, and I said, you know, you might as well just tell me because I will always find out eventually. It might take me some time. Yeah. But I will. So we've had the odd, like, you know, typical teenage, you know, collision. Mm-hmm. But I'd say 9 days out of 10 were, you know, open and honest.
And as a parent.
And respectful.
Yeah.
That's the other part. Like, there's no yelling. There's no hitting. There's no name calling. There never has been amongst parents or children or parents with their children.
Okay, wait. Let me jump in here. The reason there's no name calling, can I make a statement? Was there name calling in your relationship while she was growing up? Or
Nope.
There wasn't?
Never.
Okay, interesting. Because I think that's where a lot of things stem from, is relationship between parents. like partner and partner,
For sure.
the kid sees that,
For sure.
right? And more than not, subconsciously, they grow up with that mentality.
Well, in the heat of the moment, I think if you're going to call your partner a name, you're probably in the heat of the moment going to call your kid a name too. Like, I just think if you are that swept up in the emotion, it's going to happen.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, and it's almost like being able to manage that. And that's where it comes as a person, as a human being. How can you manage those situations to be a better parent or be a better spouse, right?
Well, you know, and at Pathstone, we've got clinics for parents to attend to learn, you know, additional parenting skills, how to level up their parenting skills. I don't profess to know all the answers. I've even called our crisis and support line saying, hey, I need to bounce something off of you. And that's what it's for. Like, it's ages and stages questions. Should this really be happening? You know, it's funny. One of the things that crisis and support have said to me, our team, and so the four main people that work in our crisis and support team together have over 100 years experience. Wow. So, like, their words are gospel for me. And the one thing they had said is, whatever you do, I remember it, whatever you do, don't take away her phone. And
Why?
I said, okay. Because a phone is like their lifeline. It's like blood or oxygen. It really is. And the other part of it is always ensure that whatever the punishment is, because they should be punished if they do something wrong for sure, but make sure it actually connects to what they did. So if they came home late and you take away the phone, that doesn't make sense. All that, do you know what I mean? Like, there's those sorts of things. Like, Danica was, you know, at a party, they drank, came home not, you know, 100% sober. So I made her do a report on the dangers of underage drinking versus taking away her phone. Why would I take away her phone?
Because it's not even relevant.
Has nothing to do with it. Someone says, well, what did she really learn? I said, I don't know. I hope she learned something, but she did a 2-page report on underage drinking. She must have learned something.
So how does she respect you enough to do that report?
Well, that was the discipline for, you know, being
right.
caught drinking underage.
So for you as a parent, you know, parents aren't perfect, and neither are kids, and there are tough relationships, right? Yeah. Like, there's probably been times when she has regretted, maybe she hasn't said it, but she has regretted reacting in a certain way, right? Or sometimes maybe you have regretted reacting in a certain way. Sure. So as a parent, how do you humble yourself enough to own up to your own crap?
If ever I've acted in a way that I wasn't proud of, I've apologized immediately for it.
Right.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to yell like that, or I didn't mean to. And she's done the same.
So you've taught
it's
that.
Automatic.
It's been taught.
It's automatic. It's as automatic as please and thank you. Like, we're all going to screw up for sure. We're not like, you know, we are humans still. We're not, you know, these programmed bots. So we are going to, you know, make mistakes for sure. And there are times I've had to apologize for sure. And she has too. But again, it's an apology to someone who respects that person. So it's never going to be like a rubbing your face or an I told you so. It's going to be, thanks so much, I appreciate that.
Right.
I talk to her the way I would talk to another adult.
Which I think is respected mutually, which is why you get talked to like you're an adult,
probably,
right?
Yeah.
So I asked you this question about what is the biggest threat to our society today, and you said social media, with positives and negatives, but you did say social media in general can be the most destructive and what is going to hurt society, especially the younger generation. So what are some ways that we can maneuver social media into being a more positive atmosphere? And as parents, what should you do to encourage social media and not look like the bad guy who doesn't let their kid have a phone?
So I think kids knowing the risks and rewards of social media and knowing they have a responsibility when they are on social media are important. I think that, you know, just like you can decide that you're not going to be friends with someone anymore in real life, online you can also delete, block, choose not to answer. You've got those rights as well, and I don't think kids feel the same way online or out of real life as they do in real life. I think the other, you know, there's just some basic filters. If you wouldn't say it to someone's face, don't put it on social media. Like I do, so we actually did a Wellness Well program about 2 years ago, and we have it now up at the Penn Center and across the region. And one of the slides is, it's okay, you know, everything will work better if you just unplug it, even you. Like, everything will. And social media risks and responsibilities is another one of them. So I think if kids are on social, they should know what the risks are of being on social and what their responsibilities are. I don't think you just say, sure, you can go on Instagram because you're 12 now.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be a little more to it.
So some of the positives of social media are obviously, being able to socialize, feel connected with people.
Yeah.
But let me ask you a challenging question. And this, I rattle with this in my brain because I just don't know. Is social media a false way of building a social presence?
Well,
or being social?
I think so I don't know if you mean like, I have X amount of followers or whatever, like
that, but also, hey, I'm DMing this girl, or I'm DMing this guy, or I'm DMing my buddies, or I'm messaging or Snapchatting or all this.
Yeah.
Like, is that a false sense of
friendships?
I feel like that's harsh, but kind of.
Well, I think that a lot of kids think that their friends on social are their friends.
Yeah, that's true.
When really they're not. Like in real life, who are your friends? Like as in people that you've spent
Who's
time
gonna
with
stick up for
in
you?
person. Yeah, people that, yeah, exactly. Who has your back? It should be a much shorter list than how many followers you have on social. Social media is a great platform for so many things. I mean, when we talk about our walking clinics, we ask kids how they heard about us and they tell us social media. So they're getting good messages as much as, other content as well. So I think it's a, love-hate relationship that we can have with social media. I think there's some great benefits, but I think, like kids being there needs to be some normalization of in real life, so IRL versus on social media, and they're not the same. Yeah.
I think it's easy to hide behind a mask and pretend like you have a social presence, because then you feel alone. Or without social media, like when you lose service or you don't have Wi-Fi.
Oh, what's that like?
Right? You literally cannot function because you are not an actual social person, but you think you are. Mm-hmm. So you don't have actual communication skills.
No, that's true.
Do you think social media has hurt communication skills and built more introverts? Not that introverts are bad, but do you think that?
So I think what it's done, it's delayed the maturity. So I would say that a 16-year-old in 1990 or 2000s that might have been able to go out and apply for a job easily, and I had a job when I was 12 or 13, on their own, now needs their parent to come with them to help them fill out the form, sort of thing. So at 18, they will be where the 16-year-olds were. So I think we've got a bit of a maturity delay thanks to social, for that reason that you just said.
You actually make a good point, because you think about 16-year-olds. 1944, they were, or 1939, they were literally being called to war. Mm-hmm. The level of maturity there, and some of them wanted to go. Yeah. Like
I still cut up vegetables and dip and leave it in the fridge for her. Like she comes home and it's ready on a plate. She's 16. She should be doing this on her own. Yeah. But I do it.
And I think it's such a hard thing, because there's not a line, right? It's such a gray area. Like there's never a line of you're being too nice or you're being too enabling. And that's my next question is, as a parent, how do you not enable your children, but give them the ability to do things on their own, or the confidence?
Yeah. So I realized I had to work on some life skills with her when she thought that the fitted sheet goes between the mattress and box spring. And I'm like, wow, this is my fault. This is on me. Because I do the sheets every week, and I do all of these things when she's not around, so she doesn't see it. So I think anything you want your kids to mimic, do it in front of them. Like do it in front of them, whether it's cooking and cleaning. And
good and bad.
Yeah, well, yeah. Hopefully just all the good stuff you do in front of them. But yeah, and I think, teaching basic life skills is on the list for sure.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about Pathstone here. So some of the core values of Pathstone, can you tell me?
Yeah, so our mission is to support the mental health needs of children, youth, and their families up to their 18th birthday, living anywhere in Niagara. And over the past 5 years, we've really worked to be in every corner of our region. As you know, Niagara is very vast. It's not interconnected with transit yet. It's going to be some time before it is. I think if you wanted to take a bus from Fort Erie to St. Catharines, it might take you a day and a half. Really? It feels like it would. Well, The drive one way from Fort Erie to Pathstone and St. Catharines, which is around the corner from here, is 41 minutes. That's one way. So if your kid is coming to counseling at Pathstone and St. Catharines, it's 41 minutes to get here, another hour for the session, and then 41 minutes to get home. That's half a day off work. And it's not a dentist's office. You're not coming twice a year. You're coming multiple times for a program. So that was when we really kind of took a look at where we are in the region. We can't just be in St. Catharines. We can't just be in Thorold. So we're opening up a new site in Welland in the new year. Actually, spring 2023.
Congrats, that's big.
Thanks, yeah. Thanks to a donor, we're able to buy the site, and now thanks to donations, we're able to renovate it, and we'll be open in spring 2023, and it's really going to service Niagara South. It's for everybody, but those out in, Fort Erie, parts of Thorold, even Niagara Falls.
Which are growing rapidly.
Colborne, Welland, Fonthill, Pelham. It's like a snap to get there. It's like 10 minutes versus the trek to St. Catharines. So our St. Catharines site and our River House site are going to be mimicked in service. It's just River House is a little bit smaller.
I see. Mm-hmm. Okay. So in terms of Pathstone representing people in mental health, what are some of the things that they focus on when discussing mental health with teens?
So it depends on the issue. So we've got walk-in clinics right across the region. So from Fort Erie all the way through to Grimsby, we have 10 in all, including one right now at the Penn Center that will be closing on December 9th. It was just a pilot that we were doing, overwhelming the amount of kids that are coming in to see us at that site. So we got to figure out a way to stay there. It's a staffing issue right now. So those clinics were designed 3 or 4 years ago. We started opening them one at a time. And what they were designed to do is be easy access to care, immediate access to care. And if a mental health issue popped up, like you were maybe anxious for a couple of days over something, or maybe sad for about a week or so, and you just weren't sure what was going on, it's a good opportunity to just toe dip therapy, see what it's like, pop in, see a therapist one-on-one for an hour, bounce this off of them, offload, be heard, be validated, get some strategies. And the kids that are coming to walk in are telling us they came for coping strategies, which is amazing because that is why the clinics were designed. We want more kids with tools in their toolbox to be able to cope and strategize and calm and regulate, as we say, so that they can continue on into adulthood, well-rounded, even-keeled, mentally and self-supported individuals. It's when we leave a mental health issue for a while that it becomes more complex, that it becomes more severe. To get rid of the anxiety, we now are focusing on calories. Now we've got an eating disorder coupled with the anxiety.
Because it's so built up.
Depression, you feel gray, you self-harm to feel something. Now we have 2 issues to deal with. COVID showed us that depression, anxiety, and self-harm were at an all-time high across the country. We saw it in the numbers that we saw at Pathstone and what kids were coming to see us with. And it's a matter of early access and intervention to avoid long-term. So if you get a paper cut versus a gash, if you get a paper cut, you may throw a little Band-Aid on it. It's going to heal real quick. You wouldn't leave it because if you left the cut, it would get infected and get worse. And now we got a big problem. So it's the same kind of idea.
I see. In terms of like this question just kind of came to my mind, but what household do you see children come from the most?
Actually, it's all. I was asked this question earlier this week, actually, or last week, I should say. And they said, is it C students or A students? Is it low income? Is it single parent? It's everything. It's families with 2 loving, supportive parents. It's families that the grandparents are raising the children. It's single parent homes. It really knows no bounds. It's rich, it's poor, it's middle class, it's everything.
Interesting. Why do you think that is?
I think getting back to kind of where we started with, easier times, resiliency, lack of. We like to protect our children, give them everything they could possibly want. So when failure comes their way, they're really not sure how to handle it. Some of the smartest kids have some of the most the highest levels of anxiety. It's a perfection thing. It's a I want to be good enough thing sometimes. So to say a C student is more susceptible to mental health issues than an A student, it's actually got nothing to do with it sometimes, or sometimes it could be the opposite.
What do you say is the number one issue in mindset you see with children?
So there's a couple of them. So body positivity.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So, and I really, you know, we talk to adults. We look at like, are you in the mirror? Are you saying things like I'm fat, I'm this, I'm old,
like about themselves?
Yeah, about yourself in front of kids, because they pick up on all that stuff. And if they look at you as like this perfect being, as a child looking at their parent who thinks they could do no wrong and they're the perfect people, and they're not happy with themselves, children may look inward and go, well, if they're no good, I'm certainly no good. And I'm not saying that's really always the source of it. We go into social media and we see perfectly, you know, contoured cheeks and bodies and filters and all the rest of it, right? I'd love to do a filter-free Friday on social. Every Friday, all the filters disappear, and that's what you post. You post yourself filter-free, and because it's real.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. So from a body positivity thing, we talk about healthy self-talk, like how to take care of yourself. You got to love yourself first before anyone else can love you. We know that. And so healthy self-talk is a big one. Like, you know, making a bad decision does not make you stupid. Making a bad decision doesn't make you bad. Those, you know, sorts of things.
So are kids telling themselves they're not good enough? They're just telling themselves that they're ugly?
Sometimes.
Wow.
And I think, like I said, the social media thing is definitely another part of it. It tears away at their self-confidence.
What do you think makes them because okay, so I'll say this about myself. I don't really care how I look. Like it doesn't really affect me. I try to look okay, but sometimes I'll show up with nothing matching. Sometimes like I don't care as much. But then there's other things that I care more about than anybody else. For example, me doing a good job at running a successful business. Some people don't care about that. But to me, if I didn't have that, I would feel like, who am I as a person? I would lose my meaning. And that's not a good thing. It's something that I think everybody struggles around working with. But what do you see as, in terms of like what they say about themselves, where does that all stem from other than just parents? Like, how can it stem from anything else?
It could come from bullying. Maybe they were bullied. Maybe whomever the bully is said things like, you know, you're stupid, you're fat,
right,
you're this, you're that.
Or a teacher.
There sometimes, you know, there are those people that either thrive because their teacher said something and they're like, no, I'm going to prove them wrong.
Yeah.
And then there's others that, you know, their teacher or someone, an adult, whomever, has said something and it's really shook them to the core. Again, it just depends on the person. Like some people are more resilient on social and don't care about the likes and the shares and the comments. And some others would take it down if they don't get enough likes, shares, and comments. Right.
They
just, never mind. And
there's different things that like the person that maybe doesn't care about the likes and shares cares about something else that the other person doesn't care about. Mm-hmm. So it's like trade-offs. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this. A lot of people say that mental health, it's like a ghost. Like it just, you can't really see it, but it can come and kill you at any time. And I don't mean like actually kill you. I mean like your mindset and consume you and just overwhelm you. And, you know, you look at like people who deal with homelessness at an older age, like 30, 40, 50 years old. And it was something that just, they just, and it's not their fault, but they just allowed this one thing to fully consume them, and it just destroyed their mental health and their self-worth within themselves.
Sometimes it's not the one thing. Sometimes it's the last thing. So it was a collection of bad decisions, bad turns, whatever, and it was just the final straw that was just too much to bear.
Yeah.
Too much to bear. And they said, I'm out.
Do you think that mental health is the number one cause of individuals choosing their future? Choose it. Like I think about children who go to school because they're afraid of what their parents would think if they didn't. I think about parents who hide and don't communicate any feelings and commit suicide because they cannot talk to anybody about it because they feel like they can't let their kids know. I think of so many different people dealing with certain decisions based on one thing, and that's thought. That's what a parent is going to think about them. That's what their kids are going to think about them. That's what their friends are going to think. Do you find that mental health is the number one, or negative mental health is the number one detriment?
Oh, if you don't have mental wellness, let's just say that way, if you don't have a good sense of self and a good sense of, or a good ability or mental wellness, I guess is basically the term we're using here, I don't think anything else matters, because it wouldn't matter how much money you have, what kind of car you drive, what kind of career you have, how many friends you have, how many parties you get invited to. If you don't have mental wellness, then all of those things are almost spoiled.
So it's the number one thing you need to watch out for.
Yeah, I would say so.
What are some things that people can do to manage their mental health?
Well, I think self-care is a big one. And I know it seems like buzzy. It's a buzzword, self-care. But it's different for everyone. So I'll tell you what I do. Okay, so I'm not a yoga person. I can't even picture you doing yoga either. And I think it's because...
Not a yoga person.
So high energy, and that idea of meditation and calming and laying down, it'd be like, okay, how long are we doing this for?
Yeah.
Okay, it's been 7 seconds, kid.
Yeah.
Settle in. So that's not my thing. Piano, I play piano.
Really?
So I still take lessons. Actually, I have one tonight. And I go every week, and I'm not amazing, and it doesn't matter, because when I play, I need to focus 100% on the piece I'm working on, which means I can't have wandering thoughts. I have to stay present. So it lowers my stress. I don't suffer from anxiety. The difference between anxiety and stress, and I'm not sure if you know, stress is more in the moment. Anxiety is when your thoughts start to roll. Like, if I do this, then what if this happens? And what if this happens? And then you start to lose your footing, and all of a sudden you're not present anymore. So I don't really struggle with anxiety, but stress for sure. I'm in a stressful job. So that's one of the things.
Yeah.
I try to sweat every day, like workout.
That's a good one. That is a good one.
Whatever. I know it's not for everybody, but even if you go for a walk after dinner, just get some fresh air, especially in the winter. Oh my gosh. If you can do like 10, 15 minutes, some people read. There's so many different things that you can do for self-care. Get someone to give you a foot massage, a scalp massage. I massage my daughter's face and back every day.
It's the best.
So when I wake her up, she gets woken up either with a back massage or a face massage. Because because she's a teenager and they don't want to hug much anymore. And so that's your way to connect and show her love.
Okay, now let me ask you this. I was listening to a podcast. He's like my idol, Stephen Bartlett. He runs the podcast called The Diary of a CEO. And he asked this question to, I think it was the lady that runs communications for Meta, Facebook. And it was, is that a distraction?
Is what a distraction?
You walking, you running, you reading, getting a massage, you playing piano. Like, is that a distraction and not dealing with your mental issues?
It's about quieting the noise, I think, more than anything. Okay. So if you've got rolling thoughts about work and you can't seem to let it go, but then you get into a book and you're totally absorbed in what you're doing. So it's anything, for me anyway, self-care, anything you can do that keeps your mind present. Massage is pretty much like, that's the beauty of touch. Like, touch lowers your blood pressure naturally, like it just does. Like any kind of skin to skin connection, right? And it's bonding. It's all kinds of things. But so like I said, with piano, have to stay in the moment, or else I'm going to lose I won't know what the heck I'm playing. Same with reading. If I'm not totally engaged in what I'm reading, nothing's going to stick with me, and I'm going to have to read the same page again.
Right.
Like nothing is more clear that I haven't paid attention when I've read a page and then got distracted and then went back to it and read the same page again, not realizing till the end that I just read that page.
Yeah. And you kind of feel like, what?
I'm like, oh my God, I just read that.
That's so funny that you do that.
Kim, dial in. Yeah.
That's interesting. I'll use reading as a way to fall asleep.
Me too.
Like
2 pages.
Yeah.
I'm out.
I can't read. So I'll get up at 5 every morning and then I'll go for a run outside. And it doesn't matter how cold it is, because I think that it's something that's uncomfortable and makes me not want to do it. And then I'll take a cold shower, and then
That's good for your mental health.
It's great. I'm loving it. I've been doing it every morning for about a week, and it's now how I want to live the rest of my life. And I'm just adamant that gets done. I didn't want to do it this morning. Thank God I did. But when I read, I'll read at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'm 6:05. I'm like falling asleep. Anybody that's listening, I'm falling asleep. But then I'll read at night, and then I'll go lullaby, right? 5 minutes, and I'm done for. So when people say, you know, oh, I do this as a way to relax. For example, your daughter, it probably is a big relaxing thing for her when she gets up and you're giving her a massage, right? Or for you when you are playing piano. What can people do to find those type of things? And I'll rephrase it. I won't say distraction, because you said it's a way to calm and take out the noise. But what can people do to find stuff like that?
Yeah, I think it just depends what you like doing. I mean, it could be crafting, it could be baking, it could be, and it may not be every single day, but it may be, through COVID, I did a top 5 grateful list. So I had to find 5 things within the day that I was grateful for. And they were tiny little things, like I made a really good pot of coffee. Someone at the grocery store who I don't even know said hello, like those kinds of little things. And then it becomes easier and easier to find those things. And then you just find that you are more, not zen, but more at peace going through your day. There was another exercise called meaningful connections. So you had to have a conversation with somebody, doesn't matter who, someone you know, someone you don't know, coworker, etc. And at the end of the day, recall that conversation and recall how it made you feel. And so it all of a sudden makes you more present in your day more often than just once a day when you're playing piano or baking. You're now more aware and cognizant of everyday, all day things to keep you more present. If you can't have a conversation with someone without picking up your phone or looking at the television or whatever, like try to work on staying present, or get somebody to kind of call you out and say, hey, I'm over here.
Interesting. Kim, we have to wrap up. Okay. We've running out of time, but I do really appreciate this conversation, and it brings light to parenthood, mental health, and honest conversation that people don't like to have.
You know, the more you have it, the easier it gets. Just ask the questions. Start asking the questions and affirming what they're saying and acknowledging, and then appreciating that they told you in the first place.
So I told you the tradition that we have. Yeah. You need to ask the next guest a question, but you don't know who the guest is.
I don't know who the guest is.
But you just got to ask a question anyways. This is always like a 10-second pauser for every single person.
I want to know what their favorite recipe is.
Interesting. Yeah. Do you think that tells a lot about a person?
I don't know. Maybe that, or like, and now I want to change it. What's your favorite tradition? Actually, I like that better. What's your favorite tradition?
What's your favorite tradition? Yeah. And that's something that we can challenge the listeners to answer. And feel free, comment it down below, and you can answer that question. Kim, how can people reach you if they want to donate to Pathstone?
For sure. So you can just email me directly, Rossi, Rossi, at pathstone.ca. Or you can visit our website, pathstonefoundation.ca, and just click the donate button.
Amazing. Yeah. That's awesome. Super easy. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching and listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.